CBS was the most esteemed news organization, and that's what I thought I wanted to do on the planet. So I got there by way of Catholic Television Network. Then I got a job at NBC. Dick Kay is a good friend of mine. He tried to gross me out when I first started by seeing if I was going to wig out as his editor by showing me the footage of the trunk, the body in the trunk. Back in those days, the mob always left the bodies in the trunk at the airport. So, I mean, that's just the way it was. And Dick Kay, I'll never forget, he was my first edit session at NBC, and that's when it was at Merchandise Market over here. I worked there for a year, all the while trying to get into CBS. Kept applying, kept applying, kept applying. Well, you don't have enough experience. Wait a minute, I just, you know. Now, am I a product of affirmative action? Okay. Isn't everyone? I mean, corporations get subsidies. You can go on, so I'm not going to harbor on that. But I'm just going to suggest, so, you know, my mama told me, you got to be twice as good to get half as far. And that applies to everybody. It applies because the market is dense. You know, it's really, really, really. And, you know, I don't envy you, but I do in a way, because I've always prided myself on innovations. I'm mentioning the various paths I took to arrive at where I came, and now I'm just simply burnt out. And I went to New York. I didn't know if I was going to go to West Coast or East Coast. I stayed on the West Coast for about 2 months. I stayed on the East Coast for about a week, and I said, I can't do this. I was actually there doing a garbage strike, and I didn't know New York doesn't have alleys. It's like your garbage is in front of your house on the streets, and it's like, no. And then I left the day after I visited Harlem, but that aside. And that time, Harlem today, beautiful place. But trust me, in the 70s, I want to thank Bill for providing this, because between you and this, I'm going to try to stay on track here. So I get to CBS, and again, I got tired of what I felt to be making money off misery. There were times, and one time in particular that I remember, when a woman had lost all 4 of her children in a fire. And you know what my thinking was? I gotta wait for that tear. And I waited for it and I got it. And reporters requested me. I was good at what I did, but I didn't like it. And I also was somewhat disillusioned by the fact that that's what I was doing when I had built all these hopes and dreams up to finally getting to CBS. Now, did that help? Of course it did. It led to everything that you experience. It's something you're going to build on. And it is, you know, I mean, it ain't always going to be wonderful and just, you know, great. And when I left CBS, I was starting to say that the director of engineering, Chris, what was his name? I forget. He called me into his office and he said, you know, it's rough out there. And I said, well, I wasn't planning on working anyway. Like I said, I wanted to sell some songs, you know, be a musician. But he was telling me rough. I'm like, I don't care, because I'm good. That's why I'm saying, I'm going back to, you have to be twice as good to get half as far. In this day and age especially. Because, you know what? There was a time that when I was at CBS, as an example, CBS would budget equipment purchases at every 12 years. Every 12 years. Do you know today, every year, everybody and their mama is at NAB? Because you got to stay up with the technology, and in a sense, it's kind of planned obsolescence. You know, you have to stay up with it because somebody else was. And now especially, see, I built an edit system in my basement before a lot of people because I had the knowledge and I knew how to do it. Now, Final Cut, we were talking about that. It comes with your Mac. You can upgrade to the Pro version, but basically, I remember testing out Final Cut. I had the first G4. Yeah, that goes way back. And I had Final Cut, and I found it to be very workable. I cut a project on it just to see if I could do it. But ultimately, I'm going to jump ahead now because I'll bet you I'm running out of time. Okay, so let's leap ahead now. I come off my year-long vacation. I'm broke. I'm like, okay, the music thing didn't work out. You know, let's figure out what am I going to do. Well, I had been turning down calls. I started to take some. But I'm going to tell you what happened. I still wasn't sure I wanted to work. And see, I remember, these are times when unemployment ain't like it is now. You know, these were times when jobs were plentiful. I mean, they really were. And that had a lot to do with my attitude about work. I'm like, you know, even though my boss at CBS told me, oh, it's rough out there, please, you know. And part of that is I actually didn't know how good I was. And a lot of that had to do of all those skills that I had combined. So I call Editel. Company Editel, which no longer exists, had, I think, 4 cities, one in Toronto, DC, San Francisco, and Chicago. I said, well, my bank account is getting kind of low. Maybe I need to start thinking about getting a job. I said, well, Editel was actually right across the back parking lot of CBS. So I'll drop them off a resume. They called me the next day. Now, coincidentally, and this is one point I'm going to get to too, this is the bridges you build. The executive director of engineering at Editel was assistant director of engineering at CBS. I didn't know he had left CBS and had moved to Editel, but he saw my resume and he goes, oh, Gregg, I know him. Call me the next day. I'm like, geez, I wasn't quite ready to go back to work. You know, okay, all right. Worked there for 9 years. For the first couple, they didn't know what to do with me. Really. Because, see, there's such a thing as overqualified. And they literally, I mean, they had me floating around the tape room and I landed with the montage picture processor, which no one could get to work. And I'm going to brag a little right now. I got that baby to work. And Stephen Cox and I became best of friends. Steve Cox was director of engineering for montage picture processor. And not only would he give me source codes, but he talked me through them. He made that machine work because guess what? They wanted it to work. Editel had just bought 4 of them. You know, San Francisco and DC had theirs sitting on the loading dock. They were sending them back. Me and Reed Brody, Film Workers Club, by the way, if any of you happen to be applying there, drop my name. Reed Brody, he said, I'll lead the horses to water, you make them drink. Because he and I decided that we were going to make this system work. It was the first workable nonlinear system in the country. There were a lot of others, EMC Square, so forth and so on. I tested many of them, but I made montage work. It was clumsy. But for the day, it blew people mind. That's what Reed said. I'll bring the horses to water. You make them drink.